Okay, so I just finished my senior year of running cross country, and that makes 9 years of running experience. And so I wanted to make a video to share with you guys how you can improve your running, specifically in the 5K. Okay, so first off, summer mileage. If you have researched anything about running a faster 5K, you've probably heard over and over again how important summer mileage is, and that's because it is incredibly important. One of the most important things is you're going to want to run easy. So easy miles, a bunch of mileage, build up mileage, but do all of the mileage in a very easy pace, super chill. You don't have to worry about running fast. The number one mistake that people actually make is running too fast. So they are really excited about training, go out fast, and they totally kill themselves, injure maybe themselves, or just get burned out, or just don't really build up a good base because they're so concerned about running fast and they don't run enough easy miles. So number one point is running easy miles. Next, let's talk about the actual structure of your week, right, during summer. Essentially, your week is going to look like easy runs in the middle and then long run at the end. I normally do my long run on Saturdays. Some people do them on Sundays. And then in the actual season itself, you're gonna have workouts in between those easy runs, right, in the middle of the week. But during your summer training, I would advise, at least definitely for a portion of the summer and maybe even for the whole summer, not really doing any workouts and more so focusing on putting in the easy miles, right? Just gradually building up your mileage. A good rule to go by is the 10% increase. So to progressively overload yourself every week, you're going to want to increase mileage, and generally doing that by about 10% is a good guideline to not get yourself injured. If you really feel experienced and you feel like you can go over 10%, then go for it, but just be very careful because again, in this time we're just wanting to build up a base and avoid injury. Okay, this is one last thing I thought of after I finished recording this section. Something that you can do during the summer, if you feel like 10% increases every week is too slow, is you can actually supplement that with another form of cardio that's gonna be less impactful on your body. An example is biking, right? Doing like mountain biking, or even better, like a stationary bike, because that has like no impact, right? Or a road bike. So if you feel like you have too small of increases and you feel like you're not working your cardio enough, then add in a stationary bike session like every week, basically, maybe twice a week even. And that way you're getting a little bit more cardio training, right? You're building up your aerobic base, but then you're also not having too much impact. The problem with running and increasing running too fast is that it's a very high impact sport because you're hitting the ground every step, right? Repeatedly. And so since the 10% rule, I feel like generally is protecting your joints and your muscles, doing something a little bit less impactful like biking is going to be more beneficial because it won't have that impact, but it'll still give you a good cardio workout. So that is something that you can consider if you feel like 10% increases are a little bit too small. One thing I do want to mention about summer training that a lot of people neglect or just haven't looked into, and I feel is underappreciated, is actually strength training. A lot of people don't strength train for if they're running a 5K or if they're running other longer running events. But I feel like there's a lot of benefit, especially during the summer when you are super far away from a race, putting in some strength training and gaining some strength in your legs. What I would recommend is doing a strength training session 1 to 2 times per week in the summer in the middle of your easy runs, and then transition those into your running workouts when you actually get into the season. But then during the summer, again, strength train and then transition that into your running workouts during the season. I feel like people can really benefit from this, and it's something that I've been doing in my personal training, and I really find it super enjoyable. A lot of people criticize this. They say, oh, you need to be specific in your training, right? And that there's tons of truth to being specific in your training. But also training, doing other things that is not specific to your training, meaning it doesn't like replicate the race or the performance that you want to have, can have a lot of benefits. So strength training, don't be afraid to use heavy weight. Of course, be careful, but don't feel the need to do high reps and low weight. Go ahead and do heavy weight, lower reps, and really reap the benefits of that strength training. And then you can transition that training into specificity later in the season when you've built up a base and you're more close to the races. So that would be my advice for strength training and for running in the summer. All right, so next up, let's talk about recovery methods. I'm going to cover recovering from a workout and also recovering from an injury. Recovering, as you have probably picked up by now, is super important in cross country because it produces a lot of wear and tear on your body. So you'll need to recover after every workout, constantly through your training, and you'll need to make sure that you're especially aware of certain injuries that might be approaching, certain nagging pains, things like that. So let's talk about how you can recover from your workouts, like post-run, things you can do to keep yourself in good condition. So first, obviously, just taking care of yourself during the run itself. So doing a good warm-up would be one of them. And then also doing a cool down, especially during your actual workouts. And also that applies to the gym, right? So if you're doing strength training, make sure you do a little warm up on the treadmill, do some mobility stuff, some stretches before you go heavy on the squats, right? So that you can adequately prepare your body. And then same thing with running. Do a warm up, do some dynamic stretches. So really movement, not static stretches is like staying still and stretching your body. But you want to do dynamic stretches, so like leg swings, things like that, to really mobilize all your joints. So do a good warm-up before your workout and a good cool down as well. That is really important. Another thing is stretching. Now you're going to want to do dynamic stretches beforehand, before the workout, and also after helps. But then you can do some static stretches afterwards when you're all warmed up. And static stretches are things like, sitting down and reaching to your toes, stretching your hamstrings. Simple stretches like that everybody knows. So do some research into some stretches. Maybe ask your coach, ask if you have a physical therapist or somebody like that you can ask to give you some stretches. Then get a few that work some different muscles and some different joints, and then employ those. Another thing that I'm really big on, my coaches are really big on as well, is rolling. So rolling can really help you work all the lactic acid out of your muscles. So lactic acid is essentially what builds up in your muscles during a hard workout to make them feel sore and stiff and things like that. So buying a foam roller and then rolling out your joints, or not your joints, your muscles, will help you break up that lactic, get it out of your system, and help you in the recovery process. So something I really recommend is getting a foam roller if you don't already have one, or even also like a hand roller or a ball that you can like roll into like smaller areas that you can't reach with a big size foam roller. But massaging yourself and rolling yourself in that way can really help you recover. Of course, if you're feeling like an injury is coming on, if you feel inflamed in certain areas, then you can use ice, right, as a classic recovery. And those are pretty much the main things that you do actively throughout the whole entire season to keep yourself in tip-top condition. And then of course, some people neglect their sleep and their nutrition, but those are two essential things. Actually, if you could prioritize any of these things in the recovery section that I'm gonna mention, sleep and nutrition are the number 1 and 2 things, especially sleep. Just getting a good amount of sleep is better than anything else you can do for your body. 8 hours at least. Of course, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can't get 8 hours if you're like a student athlete or whatever. I understand that, but just aiming for 8 hours will help you so much. And if you still feel tired, getting more, right? Just, your own body, so feel it out and try to get enough sleep. And of course for nutrition, just getting a lot of good healthy foods in you, especially protein. Bodybuilders, right, are obsessed with the protein, but runners need their protein too, because protein is what helps us recover. And so getting in a good amount of protein after your workout, especially like right after a workout, is a good time to get in some protein. And also just throughout your day is going to be essential for your recovery. Now, the fuel source for a lot of athletes, and especially runners, is carbs. So you're going to want to, of course, get in all your protein, but also a lot of your fueling before your workouts, maybe eat some protein, but the main fuel for your workouts is going to be carbs. So a lot of quick carbs, things that can burn fast, will be good for your workouts and for your races. There's certain things that will work for some people, certain things that won't work for others, and so just keep track of the things that you eat. And if you feel really bad during a run, try to think of what you might have eaten previously that could have caused that. So next, let's talk about injuries. Injuries happen. They happen to everyone. I was injured this season, and I took certain precautions and things, but sometimes you just can't help it. But there are tons of steps that you can do, tons of things that you can do to recover from injuries and to prevent them. Number one recommendation: if you get injured, or if you feel like you're about to get an injury, or you feel like something's nagging, right? Talk to somebody about it. Talk to your coach if you have a coach. Talk to your doctor friend, your PT friend, someone who knows about these things, or your runner friend, right? Just somebody who can help you diagnose what you're experiencing and help you think of some ideas to help you feel better. So talk to someone. Then you're gonna want to be very careful when you start to feel an injury coming on. You want to avoid stopping your mileage, right? Nobody wants to stop their mileage, because then you're gonna have to build up all the way again. So you don't want an injury to ruin that. But if you are really struggling, you might have to stop running for a bit. For example, at some point in the season, I was feeling a nagging pain, but I kept running, kept increasing my mileage. I didn't think it was that bad. And then eventually it got to the point where I was limping during my runs, right? And my coaches just told me to stop, because if you're limping, right, or if you're experiencing some severe pain like that, then you're only going to injure yourself more if you're running. So it's better just at that point to cut it off. So kind of, if you get injured, analyze it yourself, slow down your mileage, definitely try to back off a little bit so that you can kind of regroup, regather. And if it comes to it, you might have to stop your mileage for a bit. Just make sure to take immediate action. If I had taken immediate action when I'd first started feeling a weird pain in my knee, or a weird feeling in my knee, then I probably could have had a more consistent season. Something to keep in mind is to avoid painful movements. So if you're doing things that aggravate it, then avoid those, right? When it comes to strength training, if you're doing training in the gym and there's a certain exercise that aggravates it, don't do that exercise. It's okay if it feels a little weak, but in general, you just want to be very careful doing certain movements that aggravate your injury. And then find alternatives, right? So an example for myself is, during that time when I was injured, I wasn't able to run much at all. I was working up super slowly my mileage, and it just felt like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. But one thing that I did was I did stationary bike. So like I mentioned to you guys earlier in the video, if you supplement something in, for example, stationary bike, you can keep up your cardio without suffering from your injury. Maybe. It depends on what your injury is. In my case, my injury was, in my mind, kind of derived from a lot of impact and also limited mobility for myself. So doing a stationary bike didn't actually affect my injury, and I was able to keep up my cardio in that way and end up having a great season. So finding alternatives to certain exercises will help you be prepared for when you might face an injury. And then the last thing to remember is that you should play the long game with injuries. It might take you a while to recover, and that's okay, but you don't have to be jumping right back in. A lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, it feels so much better. They hop into what they were doing before and just like ruin themselves again. So be careful, work up slow, and play the long game. I ended up PRing on my last race of the season because I played the long game right? I had an injury early in the season, and I thought my first races aren't going to be the best. They weren't. I still had some decent races, but later in the season, as I progressed, as I built up more, I was able to kind of peak near the end of the season just because I was careful about how I was progressing through that injury. That was a long discussion for this section, but key points would be, if you're injured, talk to someone right away. Then slow down or stop your mileage depending on your situation. Take immediate action. Avoid your painful movements. So find things that hurt and don't do them. Find alternatives to those painful movements, things that you can do that'll keep up your fitness but won't hurt you. And then play the long game, right? You'll be fine. You'll be able to make sufficient progress even if you do get injured. So that's something to keep in mind. And then something that will help you prevent injury, and I think honestly if I had been doing all of these things more thoroughly earlier in the season, I don't think I would have had my injury. Have a warm-up, have a cool down, stretch after every run, dynamic stretches before, some static stretches after. Do a roll with a foam roller, ice if you have any inflamed areas. And then every once in a while have like a big session where you maybe do a good series of stretches, right? So a lot of times you might feel like you don't have time to sit down and do a bunch of stretches for an hour. That's fine. It's better to just do some after every run. But every once in a while, maybe if you have some free time in a week, do maybe 30 minutes to an hour or to 45 minutes of stretching, of rolling. Of course, you don't want to overwork yourself, but having a long session like that, I have found, can be very beneficial because you're really just able to focus on all the areas that need your attention. So that's the gist of recovery and injury prevention. Again, this is so important for running because if you don't treat yourself correctly, then you can end up getting knocked out of the game. So keep those all in mind, and I hope that none of you get injured. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about is your race strategy and what your race strategy should be, what your race prep should be, how you can create a good routine essentially for your races, because that is pretty important. It can have a big effect on your race. And of course, summer mileage and keeping yourself healthy is more important. It'll have a greater impact on your times. But having a good race strategy and a good race prep routine can be very impactful. So I'm going to share some tips and some things that'll help you to prepare for your race. First off is find a routine. Getting into a routine before your race can help you get in the right mindset. And what I would encourage you to do is experiment before a workout. So not a strength training session, but a running workout. So repeats on the track, a time trial, a tempo run, something like that. Experiment with certain things that you think might help you have a good workout, have a good race. So experiment with different fuels, different timings of hydration, right? When you're going to drink a certain amount of water, certain foods that you're going to eat. Experiment with all those things during a workout so that during a race, your body isn't surprised by what you're doing to it. You definitely need to stay hydrated before a race. That's super important. Of course, keeping yourself hydrated, getting good rest before the night before the race, and really actually several nights before the race. So getting good rest before the race is very important, but it's not always possible, honestly, especially if you're very nervous for the race. So making sure that you're getting an adequate amount of sleep several nights before the race is going to be very impactful and going to be very beneficial for you. So getting 8 hours or like your regular amount of sleep or even more than that will be great for you. Something I really want to stress here, a big mistake that a lot of people make, is don't wing it. Don't just try something new on race day, because that can be detrimental to your race, right? Maybe your friend is wanting you to try a gel, right? Or certain fuel or something that you've never tried before. It can help you, but my general piece of advice would be don't try the new thing on race day, because that can ruin your race. It can just have you in the wrong mindset, or it can mess with your body, and it can throw you out of whack and make you have a bad race. So here's how I fuel myself for my races. Essentially what I do for morning races is I wake up, eat breakfast around like 3 hours before the race, and like a good hearty meal, right? So normally I do like eggs with ham, and then like toast or an English muffin or something like that, and just make sure I feel really full, feel really good. And that's my meal for about like 3 hours before the race. And then around 2 hours before the race, I have like a carb snack, a decently sized carb snack. So that can be like graham crackers. Sometimes I just have like a pack of graham crackers. Sometimes I have like 2 rice cakes with like soy butter on top. Or you could use peanut butter. I'm allergic to peanuts, so that's why I do soy butter. But 2 rice cakes with like a nut butter on it is really good. Let's see, what's some other things I've done? I've done just like bread with like Nutella, right? Like just some white bread with some Nutella. Very simple, but just some simple carbs that you can use for some energy is really beneficial for before the race. And then about 1 hour before the race, I normally try to do some more quick energy. And that's, for me, then about 1 hour before the race, I normally do some more quick fuel. And what I do is I normally take a liquid IV, about half of a liquid IV actually, about an hour to 30 minutes before the race. And then after the race, I drink the rest of it for some recovery. That routine has worked really well for me. So I do 3 hours, right, like some eggs and some toast. And then I do 2 hours, some carbs for a snack, like graham crackers, rice cakes, nut butter, etc. And then 1 hour I do some electrolytes or some sugars as a pick-me-up. And that routine has worked super well for me. And of course, stuff's gonna be different for everybody, right? But the point is, find something that works for you. You can try what I do, or you can try something else. Of course, it's also gonna be different depending on when you're racing. For example, if I have an afternoon race, I don't do, of course, the eggs and toast because I have school. So I just make sure I eat a decent meal for lunch, and then do the 2 hour snack and then the 1 hour snack. But point is, find a good routine, experiment with different foods before your workout so you can find something that works for you. Okay, also I want to talk about your race strategy. So race strategy is something that is different for everyone. Everybody has a different race strategy, but it is something that you'll want to develop as an individual, because if you can get a good race strategy, then you can get to the point where no matter how you feel in a day, you run, you employ your race strategy, and you have a fine race, right? So developing a strategy can really help you to be more consistent. For me personally, what I do, right, is sprint out the start, not a full sprint, but a good fast start. And then I kind of have found my ideal pace for the first mile. For me, my fastest time is sub 19, about 18:41, which is pretty good for me. For me personally, I'm proud of that. I'm not a crazy fast runner, but I also feel like that's a good time for me. And what I do is I normally go about the first mile in 5:40 pace. So I check my watch on the first mile and just make sure that I'm hitting that target. Then after that, I kind of just hang on, right? That might not seem like a very developed race strategy, but I hang on. Something that really helps me is trying to stick with someone. So finding someone in the race that you can stick with is really beneficial. If you know somebody that runs a similar time to you, then try to stick with them, whether that's on another team or whether it's on your own team, or just seeing somebody in the race and being like, I'm gonna stay with them. I'm not gonna let them pass me, or I'm not gonna let them drop me. That's a good race strategy to have, because it can help you kind of not just rely on your own mindset, but rely on somebody else's strength as well. So that's really beneficial. Another strategy that people use is in the last part of the race, they try to catch people, try to catch a certain number of people. So if that's something that you like to do, then create that goal for yourself to catch a certain amount of people in the last mile or in the last stretch. But yeah. Okay, another very important thing to have for race day, at least for me, is spikes. Spikes for cross country can really improve your time, and they also contribute to your routine. So for me, putting on my spikes before my race gets me in that mindset, like I'm about to race, I'm about to run something fast, I'm about to run really hard, I'm about to try my best. And putting on the spikes gets me in the mindset to be able to run fast. And so having spikes not only helps you physically because they're a faster shoe than your trainers, but it also helps you get in the right mindset. So if you don't have any spikes, I would encourage you to purchase some spikes, at least for cross country, because usually it's in the grass. If you're running course on concrete, you don't want to run in spikes, but you could use some racing flats. It'll help you with your routine and it'll make you faster. So that's pretty much all of the things that I have for your race strategy, for your race prep. As a quick summary, just find a routine that works for you, find a fueling strategy that works for you, hydration and fuel. Also find a good amount of rest that works for you, and a shoe, so like spikes or racing flats. All of those things can contribute to a good routine. You can also use music, certain things just to get you in the right mindset. So point is, find a good routine and then experiment during your races with different racing strategies so that you can figure out kind of what works for you and what will make you run fast. The last thing I want to show to you guys, since we were just talking about spikes and running equipment, is I want to show some of the equipment that I have acquired over the last few years of me running, and some of the things that have helped me keep myself in good condition and have helped me have good races. Okay, so here we have some things that I've gotten. A roller. I use this foam roller. This is Trigger Point, the brand. It's just kind of a basic brand that I found in Target. It kind of has a cool hollow middle there, which I thought was cool. But that's been helpful for me for recovering when I'm at home, when I need a foam roller. And then this also helps for getting certain areas that are, a little smaller or tricky to handle with the larger foam roller. I also have a massage gun. This has helped me recovering, especially from injuries where you have specific points, specific muscles that really need a lot of attention. Getting a cool little massage gun like this will help you out a lot. These are my spikes. They're Sauconys. I've had them for a long time. They're kind of old, but they've worked and they've really helped me get a good routine. I'll link the new versions of these Sauconys in the description, and then also the massage gun and the rollers. I also have some bands. So if I can open this with one hand, this is a workout band that I've used for recovery. Here it is. It's actually for a lot of, like for dips or for pull-ups, but I've used it for certain stretches, and I feel like it's really helpful as a tool for helping you stretch. You can also strength train with it, but having a band can be very helpful as well. It's kind of a more niche thing for runners to have, but it's helped me. And then the last thing right here is some other bands that are smaller, and those kind of go around your hips or your knees, not your hips, your knees or your ankles. And these are good for strength training. And I use those when I was recovering from my injury. So this is some of the equipment that I have gotten. I'll link it in the description if you want to look into some of these things. But these are all really good tools to have for recovering and for getting really serious about your running. Okay, so I hope you guys have gained some things from this video, gained some things from some of the advice that I've had. Running the 5K is super rewarding, super fun. I have had tons of fun running cross country. I hope that you guys can also have tons of fun because it really is just such a great experience, really great for learning to push yourself and make yourself do hard things. If you guys have any questions about anything running related or anything in general, then leave them down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you for watching this video all the way through, and best of luck on your 5K journey.